believed the reefing hobby is built on more than just products. It's built on people, on knowledge, on passion, and on the communities that keep this hobby moving forward. That's why we're proud to announce that Exodus is officially sponsoring the Reefers Network, a community created for reef keepers by reef keepers, bringing hobbyists together, sharing experiences, supporting stores, celebrating the industry, and helping more people succeed in the reef aquarium hobby. We're proud to support the Reefers Network, and we're so excited for what's coming next.
Good evening, everybody.
Hello, hello.
How are we? Are we all good?
Yep.
Good evening to everyone out there, and good afternoon, good morning, good Tuesday. If you listen to this on the podcast, who knows? Hope everyone is well. So yeah, we've just had a bit of a brief chat behind closed doors in the green room, and even in those 15-20 minutes, we've opened a few rabbit holes. So this could go anywhere tonight, and everyone's got an opinion. But to form your opinions, we've got 3 professional coral farmers who all use trace products to varying degrees. So all questions are welcome and expected and encouraged, because where else better to get them answered than on the Reefers Network with Dong Zhao, Corey Treadwell, Terrell Newell, and I'll ask the stupid stuff in between. So all set for a good one. It's going to be a bit of a mix. We've got a fantastic presentation from Dong again to go through. A lot of sciencey stuff for the nerdy ones amongst us, a bit of humour for the stupid ones amongst us, and everything else in between. But I'm not being very polite here. Firstly, how have you all been? Dong, how was your week, mate? You been all right? Good 4th of July?
Oh, very good, very good. Yeah.
Yeah, superb. Terrell, how about yourself, mate? Was you celebrating?
Yep. Took the evening off with the family. Got some camel burgers we tried that day. So got it was good. It was pretty good.
Is that another name for something else? Or?
Yeah, my brother-in-law cooked camel burgers.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's interesting. Camel burgers.
Oh, exotic.
Indeed.
I know it was a couple of weeks back, but I've not seen you since. But it's always all the videos of what goes on in the States look cool. But I'm pleased to say we've got another European on tonight. Finally, I'm not outnumbered. Corey, how are you over there in sunny Germany?
Yeah, it's a mess here. It's really, really hot. And as you guys know, ACs is not a big thing over here. So I'm cooking in my own apartment, so sitting in my own sweat. But other than that, I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for asking.
Lovely. Yeah, all the reefers are talking about for the last 2 weeks in the UK is heat wave, fans, chillers. You know, what do we do? But we've done that one, so we'll skim over it. I'm going to do the gratitudes, pleasantries, and say hello to everyone that's joined us tonight live and are still joining us as the numbers go up. First to the post was Tony Close. Good afternoon, good evening, Tony. Well done. You've done fantastically to beat Mr. John Wright. Hello, John. Hope you're well, buddy. That's us saying hello back. There's me. There's Tony. There's John. Prime Coral's in the house. Good evening, Prime Corals. I'm hoping you've got a few interesting questions to put over, especially around water changes and elements and those things. So look forward to that. Techers. Good evening, Terry. How you doing, mate? Peter Parry. Peter Parry's back in the house. It's good to have Peter with us, as it is Anthony. Hi, Anthony. Lee. Hi, Lee. How's it all going, mate? Lee'd be interesting. He's a previous prize winner of some NIOS gear, so may have some good stuff to say or questions to ask. Now is your time. LT Reefer, how you doing? Dirt Devils Reef's back with us. Hello, mate. Keeps going. Billy's Reef. Hi, Billy's Reef. That's a cool little avatar. I like that one. Baby Dave. Hi, Dave. He did message me saying he's had a hard day at work and he's going to check in for as long as he can. Let's all say, baby Dave.
Oh.
Oh.
We got Robbo's Quinn with us. Robbo's Quinn 9630. Wounded Waters. That's an interesting one. Good evening, buddy. William, hello. Nice to have you here. Critical, good to see you. Terry, man after my own heart, angelfish lover. Hope you're well. We've got, I'm rubbish at this. The MJ Musay, but I'm really sorry, I've messed that one right up. I'm sorry if I offended you. You look much more muscly than me. Please leave me alone. Good evening to Pradeep. How are we doing, Pradeep? Hope you're well. Ollie, nice to see you, Ollie. That's William again. Pradeep's still talking. Terry's back. Mylot. Good evening, Mylot. How are we doing, mate? Dave's Reef. Hi, Dave. I think we're getting there. There's quite a few people in the house. Probably I missed people. Reef Keeper 1. How are we doing? And I think that is about it for now until more people join us. But welcome aboard. So, before we go into the slides, I think we want to just sort of find a little bit of information out from the live audience that are here. So, just going to throw up a few polls to see where we are. The first one is simple yes or no. Do you chase the trace? Are you in the audience? Do you chase the numbers for ICP'S, or do you just not give a monkeys a rhyme water chain? Roughly, where are we in the audience? So I think I'm probably going to go 50-50 split, but it'd be interesting to see. The reason why we're asking these questions up front is just so we know how to sort of tailor what we're going to talk about and just see what everyone's sort of preferences are. And I think, guys, I don't know, is it me or is it? Do you think this is a trend-based thing? Are we doing a lot of dosing based off marketing and trends, or is people generally more knowledgeable these days? Would that be fair?
Yes and yes.
I would say, combination of both for sure. There's always this one trendy trace element that everybody has to dose right now.
I think trend is driving the trace element behind the Well, the problem I've seen here is by looking at my customers. So people have much better success rate just dosing trace element but not chasing it. Yeah, that's my feeling. Yeah.
I go with that. I think the trend comes into it where you see like I don't know, another YouTube video or an influencer, whatever you want to call them, will say something like, you need to dose fluoride to get the pinks out. And everyone will go and buy fluoride thinking that's going to make all their corals pink. We all know that's not the only thing behind it, but things like that can swing a trend, and you see it all the time. But okay, this is going maybe we've got a bit of educational stuff to talk about after all tonight. If a lot of people don't dose, maybe we can dive into the benefits of these numbers.
Well, the question is, do you chase the trace? Like, are you tracing it's not do you dose or not. It's a different question than.
Thank you.
Fair enough.
Yeah, that's. I'm glad we've got you here, Corey, because your grasp of the English language is better than mine. So thank you for that. But okay, no, that's a fair point. Yeah, so there's a big difference between dosing and chasing. Yeah. So, okay, so still the same sort of thing. People aren't chasing numbers because they probably don't think there's importance, or the juice isn't worth the squeeze, to coin a phrase. So we can see where we go there. Okay, interesting. So the next one, those that do dose generally, what products are you using? We've got the 2-part, 3-part, 4-part, and then the all-in-one. I suppose all-in-one's got its place on smaller tanks. And then I've always found a bit of a quandary in my head about 2-part, 3-part, 4-part. The scientist in me from work prefers the 4-part because you can fine tune more things.
Mm-hmm.
But then you've got the convenience of 2-part, where it's just a double-headed doser, cheaper, easier, but you haven't got the control over alk and, or magnesium and calcium independently. So,
well, it depends what 4-part actually means. Like, is it a 4-part like modern reef, where it's basically just magnesium 2 times alkalinity and 1 time calcium, or is it calcium, magnesium, calcium, alkalinity, and 2 different trace element solutions? Because that would be a 4-part I would much rather have than a 4-part where it's basically just split everything into 4 parts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So is that? Correct me if I'm wrong. Is that what the Red Sea 4-part is like?
Yes, that's what the 4-part is. Yeah.
Kind of sounds like what we have on our line too. So we have, in our calcium, we have magnesium and a bunch of other little trace elements that don't precipitate out. And then we have separate magnesium and then a separate trace element as well. So the idea is you're going to get your base trace elements. You're going to get whatever you need generally out of, your regular 2-part. And then for your high demand systems, if you need a little bit more of a bump, then you have the trace elements or the straight magnesium.
Yeah. I know the topic tonight is going to be more about the trace side of dosing, but I find the ones where it's a magnesium and calcium mix very difficult. For example, I'm dosing Reef's elements at the moment on one of the systems, debating changing it because my calcium is depleting much faster than magnesium, and you kind of can't do nothing about it. You have to stick with it. I don't know whether that's because my coralline is not growing as rampantly and taking up the mag or whatever. I don't know, but you just haven't got that control of you. But interesting.
But that's very uncommon. I mean, we have it that the magnesium is also in the calcium part, and it's very, very uncommon. I mean, it does happen for some customers that magnesium just doesn't raise the same amount as calcium, but that's a very uncommon way. For that, I would just add another calcium, like add it once a week. It usually is more than enough then.
Yeah, I find it interesting. It's my SPS system where the calcium is being consumed faster than the mag. On the LPS system, it's pretty balanced.
Also, the mag is staying high and the calcium is being consumed?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's even more rare, because I sometimes have customers where the magnesium doesn't catch up. Like you have more magnesium consumption than calcium, but having higher magnesium is rare.
So what you're telling me is I need to buy some new test kits to validate this.
To be honest, the magnesium test kits are the shittiest of all test kits. It's the hardest to test. So.
Fair. Well, it looks like people are pretty mainly around the simplistic routes of 2-part and 3-part.
Yeah. I mean, that's what most people enjoy, right? Having it simple but yet effective.
Yeah, 100%. And don't forget, that's just your base dosing as well. You may supplement on top of that.
And I think a lot of people get away with, the idea is to have something available in the water and not let it deplete entirely. And it's less about hitting a specific number, but just always having available, trace elements in the water. And I think that's why people, kind of land on a 2-part or a 3-part without getting more in depth with it, like Reef Moonshiner's method or their own kind of corrections on dosing. It's just easier for them to kind of trust something that already has it all set up for them and just let it ride.
Yeah, I'd go with that. Yeah. Also, for me, it's looking at other people's tanks and what they dose, and then gaining sort of trust in a product from seeing it delivering something, and not the marketing spiel. So now, having the benefit of running 2 separate systems, I'm tempted to switch dosing on one system now and try a different product, and I can do a live comparison, right? And I like that sort of citizen science and adjusting things and checking it yourself. And yeah, so that's where I'm going. So, okay, right. So that's the dosing poll over. So the 3-part actually come out the most popular there. So on top of your base dosing, this is the last one, just to sort of see again what people are up to. So on top of your base dosing of your 2-part, 3-part, do you dose individual elements? Let's see if I can put this one up now. Stop poll there. Yeah. Yes, no, or occasionally. I think myself, I'd probably fall into the occasionally bracket. I'm dabbling with it now, based on ICP. I think, again, personal opinion, I think blind dosing is always a bad idea. So you need to have, an idea of what you're very low on before you could contemplate dosing. But with the all-in-one products, you haven't really got a choice, have you? You're just doing it because it's stabilized single shot. So
Yep.
Yeah, but the all-in-one products are kind of the mentality that we were talking about. Go low but steady. You wouldn't overdose anything with an all-in-one. That usually doesn't happen. Most of the time, you're even underdosing some of the trace elements, but at least you're dosing everything at the same time, like constantly. But you usually don't overdose anything with one of those.
Okay.
And then there's the argument too of how fast some of these elements may fall out or deplete or be used in the water column. So, rather than trying to, continuously hit it with, daily, I even thought, the daily corrections, do you want to do it all in one shot or have it even dosed throughout the day to where there's, little splashes in there. And that's where like an all-in-one product or like a 2-part or 3-part that has, the trace elements with it are going to be beneficial because that's kind of dosed evenly throughout your day.
Yeah, we'll go with that. We've got someone who's on NIOS, clearly. Hope it's going well, Dave.
My second Porsche is already ordered.
Yeah, you live in the right place for it, right?
Yeah. Got to support local businesses.
Absolutely. Okay, so yeah, it seems that quite a lot of people are au fait with top-up dosing. So we've kind of got a good mix of strategies in the room now. So all right, I think that gives us an idea of where we're going with this. Thank you for those that have joined in with that one. I'm just looking around now. I think that's the last poll put together. Yeah, is there any other questions you guys want to know before we dive in and start talking at people a little bit? Any questions worth asking the masses?
The masses?
And ask from us?
I'm not really too. I don't know a lot about calcium reactors. I never used one, and I'm seeing some people are talking about it in the comments. I would love to hear a little bit more about that too, with trace element dosing. Like, how do you guys have experience with it? Because I don't.
Yeah, me either.
Oh, calcium reactor for trace element?
Yeah, with trace elements. Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
I have been using calcium reactor for like 20 years, but I stopped doing that because that the idea behind that using the trace element in the calcium reactor media to supplement your tank may not be valid at all, because that many of the very important trace elements for the living coral are not in the skeleton. It's in the tissue. So you are not getting those kind of. I hear a little bit echo, maybe from somewhere.
I have headphones.
Okay, good. All right.
Yeah, you make a good point. But I also thought if you're using a calcium reactor with something like I don't know, is it aragonite, contains strontium and other bits anyway, so you don't just get calcium as the name suggests. You do get a bit of other stuff, but that's a very good. I never actually thought about that. Like, it's dead tissue, isn't it? So it's not living tissue stuff.
Actually, we will talk about that in a slide about that. That is a very good question. Yeah. There's a
Okay.
yeah.
Yep. Well, is it
Can
really
prepare.
really interesting one from Terry here. Did the fish bother about trace elements? Are they going to need?
Of course.
Do you as a person? Yeah. So fish do too.
Yeah.
So it's a fair point. A very fair point.
We'll probably get to that later when we talk about where trace elements come from, and food is one of them. So
yes. Yep.
Okay. And last bit before we
Okay.
go in, all the calcium reactor does for me is supplement my alk and calcium. I dose 3 parts to supplement the calcium reactor. Okay. Interesting. I mean,
and
I
reef
would've-
moonshiners. That's a lot of mix up. Yeah.
that's a cocktail. Yeah. I thought I would have thought you guys with your larger scale operations, calcium reactors are a more economical way to go. Is that? Is that fair?
Not really.
Yeah.
Not
Okay.
necessarily.
And for me, I would be a hypocrite if I would sell a 2-part and then use a calcium reactor. I mean, that wouldn't be. And it's the best for me if I show people, hey, it works on my farm in that size, so it's probably going to work on your small tank as well, or smaller tank. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true.
Yep. And
Well,
for our-
the major issue of calcium reactor is that it always keeps the water saturated with carbon dioxide. That is a major drawback from that.
Mhm.
So regardless of your pH of your tank, the saturation level of CO2 from scientific studies shows that it does impact your corals growth. But if you don't care about the last 10%, it really doesn't make much difference.
No, fair. Okay, right. Well, I think on that note, we're going to start asking questions that are covered in the slides. So if I start going through the slides, and guys, please, I want to get as many questions as possible in real time. So please keep putting questions in the comments. I will bring them up at relevant times and put them to the panel. So please do. Right. So Dong, firstly, thank you again for putting this together. I'll hand over to yourself, my good sir.
Okay. So in my hand, there's 2 scientific literatures. So the one published in 2008 by Mr. Bolling, the guy who responsible for the Bolling method. That's at 2008. This article actually is really the holy grail of trace element for coral at that time. So this paper is published at 2023, 15 years later. It's a more comprehensive peer review paper. So with this one, there's a lot more comprehensive than the 2008, and also corrected and updated tons of information about trace element on coral. So, okay, let's dive in to this talk. Do you hear a little bit echo or just me?
No, I hear a little bit of it, but I can't tell where it's coming from.
No.
Yeah.
Let's mute people. Keep talking, guys. Dong's on mute, so
Yeah, you good?
I can't hear a second echo.
All right.
Or was there? This is we're doing this live because we're so professional. Corey,
okay, so
are we all right? We'll try.
Keep
and get
going.
through it.
Keep going, Dong, and
Okay.
then we'll
Okay.
mute you.
no problem. Okay, next slide, please. So trace element in coral. Trace element, the reason they're trace, because they're in really, really low concentration. For matter of fact, the most benefit trace element, they're all in ppb level, parts per billion, not even in ppm.
Yeah.
Even they're in a very tiny quantity in the seawater, but coral are equipped to extract this trace element from the seawater and utilize them. So let's go to the next slide, and we can talk about more about the important point of view. Yep. Next one, please.
Just to give the people a layman's view, I like to sort of explain things in idiot language, because that's how I understand things. When I was cutting my teeth in water treatment, which I do for a job, how parts per million was explained to me, and I may have said this before, so if I repeat myself, I apologize. It's hard to grasp just how little 1 ppm or 2 ppm is.
Yeah.
So if you visualize it this way, if you visualize an Olympic swimming pool filled with 1 million ping pong balls, and you throw in 1 red one, that's 1 ppm, and that's how tiny a number we're talking. Which blows your mind even further when you talk about phosphate at being 0.002 ppm. You're cutting out a tiny little piece of a ping pong ball and chucking it in. That's just how, in my head, I can compute these things, just visualizing that. And then parts per billion, I don't think there's a pool big enough for that. So, right.
Okay. So the first important concept about trace element is that not all the trace elements in seawater serve a biological function. Some of them are just environmental pollution, or because they just happen on the face of Earth. They're present in the seawater. Doesn't mean they do something. For example, that if you look at the photo here, that both the bird and the snake are all in their native habitat. So if you want to keep a snake, you probably won't put the bird in there. The bird is not really there to beneficial the snake at all. Actually, quite the opposite. It's like the environmental pollution, it actually harming the snake. So, but for the bird, that snake actually is a beneficial trace element because he eat it. So that's his food. So that's an important thing is that if you look at the seawater profile, they have like 70 something trace element in it. Most of them are just sit there. Most of them being there is not serving any biological function at all. For matter of fact, the scientists who work on environmental protection, ocean, that kind of thing, coral reef, they are more worried about the pollution, which means that when trace element, the level elevated to a certain level, it becomes toxic. Most of them are. When you add too much to your tank, it becomes toxic. That is why I've seen many people locally from my customers kill their tank by dosing trace element. But just keep that in mind. Okay. Yeah.
Too much of a good thing is bad for you.
Too much is not a good thing.
So you're telling me I should stop dosing arsenic and uranium?
Oh, actually, no. You should dose uranium to yourself. You see that?
To myself, yeah.
Oh yeah, the glow,
I like that
the
glow.
green glow.
Yeah.
Exactly. So
it showed 0 on my MS test. So should I?
Oh,
should I
too bad! You need
dosing
to eat
it?
more. Yeah. So think about it this way: that you do not need a night light when you go to bathroom at night, because you grow, you can illuminate your pathway. Arsenic, you don't have enough arsenic. You know, the pathway to arsenic actually is a wonderful trace element to thin out the population. Yeah. So there is a very important concept. Mimicking the ocean may not be the best way to go. You want to take the good part, but ignore the bad part.
Yeah, that's something we've all, even me, I've hold my hands up, fallen foul to before. I used to think if it's present in seawater, I want to get my tank as close to that as possible. However, I never step back to think, should it be present in the first place?
Mm-hmm. And also, where do you get the level?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So less is more.
There's the element of, if you look at the farming industry, if you want to grow a tomato, you'd never find a shop-bought tomato in the wild. They've been adapted somewhat, but they're fed, they're fertilized, they're heavily lit. You know, you prioritize their needs to get the best yield and all that sort of stuff. So, like you say, Corey, could we make our tanks better than nature?
Yeah, let's say in nature it's 1 microgram of something, and you add 5. Could you have a better tank with that? I believe so, but
yeah. But I say again, too much of a good thing is bad. Even oxygen is toxic at too high a level. But it's essential for life. So I think that's the lesson to hold in the back of your head throughout this conversation.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Okay, let's go to the next. First of all, for a reef tank, get your salinity right. If your salinity is not right, everything is off the chart. So that is why that make sure that you really have a good tool to measure your salinity. So your salinity should be, I have seen so many tanks with the salinity off the whack because they're not using the proper way to test their salinity. So your alkalinity, your calcium. Oh yeah, okay. Mm-hmm.
In Germany, we don't measure in specific gravity. We measure in density. And the tool, the Tropic Marine, measures density in Germany. Is it a different one in Germany, or is it the same one in the States? And that's why many people have slightly off values because density and specific gravity is slightly off. If you
Oh,
look at
actually-
the numbers.
Okay.
Actually, people using this tropic marine tool actually get a really their salinity most likely is correct.
Yes, because density is a better measurement than specific gravity, and that's why we use it. But I just
And
wondered if that's the case.
probably not. That's not the case. Is most of the salinity that off the chart or actually is not accurate is by our cheapo refractometer. Also calibrate at 0. That the double whammy.
With
So
the
yeah,
borrow
yeah,
water.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. So I remember when I got into the hobby 20-something years ago, a good refractometer probably close to $100 back then. Those are really good, well made, and all the marking on the refractometer is precise. So you can calibrate at 0, and your reading is still correct. But these days, the $15, $10, $25 refractometer you buy from online, those are garbage. So the marking on them are not precise. So if you calibrate at 0, you off a big time when you read your tank water salinity. Also,
And there's two
there's
different
some,
versions of it. There's one made for salt water and one for marine water. So with the trace elements added to it, there's also two different versions of them.
Exactly.
And usually
So,
the cheap ones are just made for salt water.
brine, so for briming turkey.
Yes.
Mhm.
Correct.
So okay, so that is another concept. Make the salinity correct. That is more important than you play with the trace element. So the salinity right, then you talk about your calcium, alkalinity, magnesium, and talk about trace element. Also, another important message is that make sure your major element is in check before you go to trace element. If your calcium, alkalinity, magnesium, these things are not even there, forget about chasing trace element. It's no point to doing that.
Yeah.
So they're
Also,
always the priority.
also worth mentioning, if you're dosing 2-part and some others, your salinity can creep up over time if you're not doing water changes. So that's for the non-water change brigade. I'm not having a go at anyone, but just be aware that it can creep up over time as the two mix. There's a byproduct.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes, sodium chloride.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, that's what the boiling method comes in for
Correct.
the non-sodium
Sodium chloride free salt.
Free,
Yes.
yeah, exactly. Sodium chloride free salt. Yeah. And also, if you do your frequent water change and check your salinity often, and that's another way that you can handle it in a slightly inexpensive way and
So
less
what you're
complex
saying
way.
is water changes are good.
Of course. And also the checking your salinity frequent is good.
Yeah.
It's so simple. There is no reason not to do it.
I think people skip over that though because it's so simple. You know, everybody's always looking downrange at everything else more complicated. And then, I mean, I've done it. And it's bit me in the butt a couple times where, you know, I'm pulling water out of my grow out system because I'm shipping, and then it's putting fresh water back in, and I'm not paying attention to it. So, you know, just little things like that, and it can happen over time.
Exactly. Yep.
Complacency.
So that's right. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Trace element in reef salt. So all the major reef salt, they have trace element in there. And actually that all the reef salt, the good one, and the trace element level are actually pretty good. So they're not in a toxic level, they're valuable. And also the manufacturer has a much better equipment to test their batches than you're sending out an ICP test. So that's another important message is that use a good salt with properly trace element in there. With that said, water change actually quite important. For example, if you have a nano tank, dosing trace element to the nano tank actually is playing with fire. It's very tricky to do. If you have a nano tank, a small tank, for example, 100 liter and below, you have the best weapon. It's called water change. You can do a large percentage of water change easily and frequently to maintain your trace element. That way is much less likely to overdose your tank. Overdosing trace element is like a nuclear bomb, seriously, to your tank. Seen so many times, happens so often. If you have a small tank, do a water change. So that is another message I want to pass on. So yes, water change is good. If you are able to do large percentage of water change frequently, if that's feasible, do it.
Yep, fair. I use it as a reset. If I get an ICP back that's a bit out of whack, rather than try and tune it all up, I just do a water change as a sort of base reset and then start again. It's a good tool. Good tool.
But it's the worst tool to actually dose trace elements in a big system. So
that is true. That is true.
Because if, let's say, your iodine is off by 40 points and you do a 10% water change, you're adding like 2 or 3. It's like nothing that you're adding. So, and people really, that's what people still don't quite understand. They say, yeah, I'm doing water changes, so I'm dosing trace elements. Yeah, but you're not really, if you do the math. So it is a somewhat good tool. You need to have, as you said, a salt with good values, but to use it as a supplement is not the right tool to do. You could do it, but that's expensive.
Exactly. So if you do well for large tank, if you do 25% water change a week, that is a big task. Even you do 25% a week, and also when you have a large tank, most likely your trace element consumption is pretty high because of the amount of coral you have in there. So for large reef tank like coral farms, and if you have a 1,000-gallon reef tank, dosing trace element is important. And also, when you have a large tank, the error of dosing trace element is lower because that you can measure more precisely.
Right.
Yeah. So next slide, please. Okay, trace element not just for coral. For matter of fact, trace element is for coral, the symbiosis algae inside the coral, bacteria, fungi, virus, every freaking thing, sponge as well. So when you dose trace element, it's not just for your coral. It's for everybody living in the glass box. So this is one of the snapshot of the paper showing you that, there's a trace element is important to every freaking living thing in your glass box.
Dong, are you gonna complain about this because all your hard work under bacteria, they've spelled your name wrong?
What?
So all your hard work and expertise, and under the bacteria column, they spelled your name wrong. It's just not fair, is it? Really?
No, that's not mine. No, that's not me at all. That's somebody else. Okay. I wish it's mine. Okay. I can Photoshop it back.
Good man.
Okay,
good man.
let's go to the next one. Okay. The idea of the simply duplicating the nature's profile. What's the problem of that? Problem number 1. Trace element profile vary dramatically across even the same coral reef. And also very dramatically from different part of the coral reef, and different coral reef, different depths of the water, they're all different. So what number are you trying to duplicate? You try to duplicate where the Garnipora really is thriving, right next to the volcano, which the manganese and iron is 1,000 times over on the Great Barrier Reef. Which number do you pick? So that's one hurdle. First hurdle is that there is no standard for the trace element concentration or the trace element profile. What is in there, how much there in the coral reef. They're all different. It's a moving target, and also it change seasonal, change daily, change whatever activity or this big giant sailboat pass by, and your Royal Caribbean boat pass by a reef, and suddenly all your urea content plus uranium arsenate just skyrocketed for that moment.
Yep.
Okay, so just kidding. So, but the nature itself, the trace element profile vary dramatically from place to place, time to time. Okay, it's a moving target. Let's go to the next one, and it can, okay. And also trace element for coral is still a new frontier for science. There is still like at the infancy of the understanding about what this thing do. And the most important question is that how much they need, how much the coral need, how much the bacteria need, how much the fungus need, how much the sponge need. No answer. Yeah, seriously.
So
up to
we're
date,
still learning,
no
right?
answer.
If we're
Yeah,
dosing
we're still learning.
one or two trace elements for the
Mhm.
benefit of the number, and that
Yeah.
might be feeding the negative stuff in the reef, we don't know that just yet.
Yes.
Because
And even
whoever-
just for the coral, how much is good enough? What concentration is ideal? No, we don't know that. So the most studied trace element so far is iron and manganese.
Yeah.
That we still have a little bit fuzzy on the number over there. But the good news is that in the past 5 years, the humongous amount of scientific literature coming out, because there's tons of funding put into those basics research to look into the trace element thing. Yeah.
I guess that's
Go
where
ahead,
I was
Jamie.
going with it. Like if you're, I guess in a nutshell, a scientific experiment, and you're dosing your tank, and then you're sampling that tank routinely, and you can prove that it's consuming trace element A. Oh look, I'm dosing it in; it's being consumed. But then there's no correlation, further research to say what's consuming it. It could be that could be the reason why your Asterina starfish population explodes or something.
Oh yeah, it could be. Yeah. Yeah. Seriously. Yeah. Exactly. So all this experiment in the lab also does not duplicate what's the coral experience in a native habitat. That's why in science we said all the model study are wrong, but all of them tell us something. So we are one tiny step closer to the truth, but still far, far away. So keep that in mind. If a vendor tell you this is the trace element is doing this and you have the dose at this level, then I should ask, show me the data. Show me the scientific data and literature that's demonstrated that what your advice is accurate. Besides that, it's a marketing gimmick.
I think there's a little common misconception that, this specific trace element will influence this specific color, and that's not true.
Not exactly.
Right.
Yeah, not exactly true. So let's go to the next slide, and then we'll tell you.
What we do see, sorry, Doug, is I'm sure Corey will be able to chip in on this one. Is when we have a lack of an element and we see a negative impact on the coral, that's pretty much tangible proof that it's needed, right?
Yeah, yeah. When you lack an element, yes, you will see the impact, but you don't know how much to add.
Correct. And there was a great study. I can't remember who it was. They were testing like how corals react to zinc levels, and they showed in their test that 1 microgram of zinc helped the coral better. It looked way better. And then they went up and up and up, and at 10 micrograms, the coral died.
Yes.
But in reality, if you have 10 micrograms of zinc and other trace elements are in a higher level there, you don't tend to see that issue. So there's also correlation between how high are other trace elements. So they're basically leveling out each other. That's also something that you don't really see as of now in science backed. But in our systems, we can clearly see it, because sometimes I reach up to 10 micrograms of zinc if my DI is empty again, and I don't pick it up fast enough. But my corals don't die; they look fine because I keep other levels high as well.
Yeah. So that's exactly the problem about that is why it's so difficult to figure it out in a scientific laboratory. Because it's such so many parameters, so many things can influence the outcome. So now here is a very interesting study. So this is an interesting looking graph. So how do we read this graph is that they analyze 5 macronutrient and 13 trace elements on 4 different types of coral. How do we read this graph is that if the trace element profile in this coral are similar, then you can see this shape. So for example, blue shape representing blue outline representing the one coral, the yellow outline representing another coral's profile, and a red one representing another coral's profile. If these trace element and macronutrient profile are similar, the shape, the outline on the graph on the right-hand side should be similar. But the reality is not. They're not even close to each other. That means that one conclusion they draw is that different species of coral, their macronutrient and trace element profile in their tissue are dramatically different.
Okay, so what that would mean in a hobbyist term is if I had an acropora only display and a Euphilia only display, my dosing needs would be very, very different.
Yep.
Yes, but the problem is that you don't know how to dose. Yeah, because the science is not going to that detail to tell you, okay, if you have an SPS system, you should dose this, and on the LPS system, this is not that clear cut. All we know is that they're quite different, but we do not know how we're targeting it.
I mean, you could, let's say, essentially, let's say you have Gonopora, your micromucilords, and then a few other things, and you could see the trend in your tank of what trace elements are getting consumed compared to, let's say, other tanks. Because I mean, that's kind of like what we got here. And to your point, like, yes, my LPS tanks, consume dramatically different from the SPS tanks. The SPS tanks are just so high demand, and they're using it all the time. Whereas the LPS, everything it's a lot lighter usage. It's a lot more. It's very specific on what corrections I do have to make on them.
So this is a wonderful question. So but this actually bring up another question, is that when you see the trace element, the level drops after 1 week between 2 ICP tests. Are you sure this trace element actually being utilized by coral or just precipitate out of the water?
It's a good question.
You don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, or the test
because
was wrong.
Or the test is wrong. Yes, exactly. And because that, remember, all these trace elements, they are transitional metals. Most of them are. What this metal does is that they tend to precipitate in a high pH environment, either as a hydroxide or as a carbonate. The good the thing is that our reef tank in seawater, we do not lack of carbonate. We are saturated with carbonate and hydroxide. So when you see an element goes away, is it actually get consumed by a coral, or get consumed by the bacteria, or get consumed by your sponge, or just crashing out from the water column?
Here's an interesting question from Robbo Quinn. Are these studies done from corals in the wild? And I suppose to expand on that, would we see difference with artificial compounds?
Many of the study actually they do the coral in a laboratory, if that's the question. So there's no way you can do this thing in the ocean. So when you analyze, you mean
the corals taken from the wild?
Okay, yes. Those are from this paper that what the coral are taking from the wild. That's for sure. So I do look into that. So because that's one thing I look for is that when they do experiment, they publish a paper. Are these coral actually from aquaculture, mariculture, equal to wild? So because that plays an important role. Okay, so
you got a question. Just real quick. because we've talked before, and I know you cited that, like chromium, for instance, that there's no studies that show that coral consume chromium, that it's damaging to them, and so it's always I've brought up the question in my mind is the transitional metals, is chromium acting as a transitional metal to something else? Is another bacteria consuming chromium? So there's the argument. Again, when we're getting into different methodologies, different companies, I noticed that, let's say, reef moonshiners might look at the entire spectrum of your trace elements, macro and minor, and then another company may look at a specific element and say, hey, that's not important, so therefore we won't use it. So my question is, are we lacking something, by not dosing that, only looking at coral, but negating, not looking at all the other biological processes that are happening in the tank? What may be using it outside of coral?
For matter of fact, that this is a very, very good question. So you asked a very good question. To answer that is, first of all, reef moonshiner is not more advanced than the scientific literature.
Right.
Get that? Yep. That's the number one thing. Number two thing, in terms of other study, yes, the people have looked into the chromium, to the bacterial, fungi, algae, virus, all covered. But the thing is that bacteria and algae, bacteria has one of the habit by accumulating environmental metals. Even they do nothing to them, they still take them in. That is how many scientists can be able to do like identify the environmental pollution, make a timetable, whatever the study is, by looking at coral skeleton absorption and whatever profile on the sediment, that kind of thing. So, but in terms of the biological process, we all actually, out of my curiosity, I do look into this marketing for this chromium by different company, and to say what they do. Okay, they're all citing the same thing as this boiling paper at 2008, which that on this paper, they said that the roles of chromium actually based on human.
Yeah.
The role in human. So
the way I
kind of...
Sorry, Corey, go on.
Go ahead.
I kind of see it the same way as Terrell. It's a similar thing that, I mean, for a while, rubidium was the new hype trace element. And there's no real study that shows that it does anything. But in my opinion, since it's in a measurable amount in salt water in the ocean, why not overdose it, but at least have it in a good amount? I have rubidium, barium, selenium, like all these trace elements that don't really have shown to have a like scientific value to a reef, but still kind of makes sense to have one. So at least dose them to have them there, but not overdose them. That's my opinion. I always recommend people have somewhat, even though there is no noticeable value yet. Because who knows, in 5 years, we get a new study and it says rubidium was the most important trace element, and for 5 years, nobody was dosing it. That's why...
To your point too, I've been told, that fluoride had no effect on coral. Coral doesn't use it, and
people still say that.
Oh no, fluoride does.
Scientists,
right.
Yeah, but
major
there are
companies
still
have
scientists that say fluoride is not necessary to a reef tank. But I instantly notice when my fluoride drops below 1 milligram per liter. I instantly see that in my aquaporus.
Yep. And
fluoride is in all the reef salt.
Yeah.
So
not every
fluoride,
result. There are some results that are low on it.
But it's still there. So the fluoride is demonstrated. There's scientific studies showing the fluoride actually is important.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I think that point is just there are, and this kind of goes back to who are we talking that's telling us that these are important or not important. And then, because again, I've heard that same thing that, fluoride is not important. The corals don't utilize it. But, from my experience, when I first started messing with trace elements, I was dosing fluoride and maybe like 3 other ones. And within a week's time, I saw a dramatic change in the fluorescence of the health of my coral. So, it's one of those, I can experience this and be told this, and it doesn't always cross over.
Yeah, I think taking that chromium point as well, what you said, Terrell, if you take the approach of you don't need to dose chromium because only bacteria consume it, doesn't make it any less important. And if you just look at it in our world, if you take away the bees, none of us get to eat. The microorganisms make a further impact.
The problem is that the bacteria doesn't take them in, but it acts as a poison. The bacteria doesn't even benefit the bacteria.
Mm-hmm.
But then, do we not know yet that some of those bacteria slough off and they're consumed by other things? And I don't know. Just because a bacteria consumes something doesn't make it irrelevant. Is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, exactly. That's the truth. Because the bacteria tend to accumulate lots of elements from the surrounding water to incorporate it inside. But it doesn't. But then the problem is that they also have a mechanism to prevent them from getting too much that will kill them. So then, for example, let's just say potassium. So marine bacteria has a tendency to accumulate potassium. The potassium level normally is like 50 times higher in bacteria than the surrounding water. But doesn't mean that our coral, we should dose the potassium 50 times.
Right.
So this is the same. And also that by dosing trace element, if you have oil in one product, you already have some in there. It probably is not that harmful as long as the concentration is low, but you dose in there. But you're intentionally dosing certain element like chromium, deliberately dosing chromium. I think that kind of process is kind of misguided. Yeah, that's my feeling. Is that
I think we already had a discussion in the WhatsApp group about dosing trace elements like chrome. I think we call them in Germany super trace elements because they're so tiny. You can only really measure them with an ICP'S.
Yep.
And in my opinion, you really shouldn't be dosing them because they get dosed through so many different ways into a reef tank in more than enough that dosing them usually only ends in overdosing them. That's why I was never a friend of dosing like single dosing selenium, single dosing what is it, chromium,
uranium,
cobalt, uranium. I love dosing uranium.
Okay, let's go to the next slide. So people might think that the symbiosis algae inside the coral will have a pretty similar trace element and macronutrient profile, right? Because they're just symbiosis algae. No, they're not. So the two things in the coral, taking the trace element, the coral tissue themselves, and also the symbiosis algae living inside the coral. So this study shows that there's the symbiosis algae, their trace element profile requirement also different from different species of coral. That is because there's about 40 different kinds, approximately 40 different kinds of symbiosis algae available there. Different coral actually depends on their species, location, environmental, whatever thing, their preference, their taste of music. They actually have a different type of trace element, the symbiosis algae in there. They actually have a different profile.
Can you cycle back to the previous slide and then cycle back to that one again?
Yeah, see,
just to see the comparison. Wow.
Yeah, the algae, of course, they are still the same, much better, much more correlated, but they're still quite different. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, I see the same thing as Terrell in our farm. We have an LPS farm and an SPS farm, and the trace element consumption is so differently in both systems. Like the LPS farm's consumption in iodine and vanadium is much higher than compared to the SPS system, but in the SPS fluoride is much higher, or zinc is much higher. So I absolutely see what the science is doing in my tanks.
So that is why keeping a mixed reef is harder.
I mean, that's what people say, right? Mixed reef is highest class.
And I think the vanadium has been tossing around on the internet as a joke about, there's a useless trace element. No, it's not. Vanadium is not a joke. Vanadium actually is something that is but we are not going to talk about it today. We're going to leave it to next time. So, okay. Next slide, please.
Just going to say, better late than never. This is the one stream that Gaza was built for. He always asks about trace elements and stuff, so he's finally made it.
Yeah.
Welcome aboard, Gaz.
Yeah, this is only the part 1 of the 3 series. So is there such thing as a diving in trace element profile for a reef tank? In your dream, I think it's difficult. Based on the information we have so far, very challenging. Even you have an ICP'S sitting in your living room, still pretty difficult to do that. So, okay, let's move on. So what to do? How do I dose trace? Oh my God! So this is such a moving target, so difficult to do. So adding some better than adding none. Always have a low level of them in there. It's much better than have none. Oh, by the way, important thing: if your ICP'S come back saying that not detectable, it doesn't mean it's none. It's not zero. It's not zero. Okay. If your ICP'S, yes, ICP'S saying
There's
that not
no
detectable.
ICP saying it's zero. That doesn't exist.
Yeah, it doesn't mean zero. It just means that freaking instrument is not good enough to detect it. That's what it is. And even your ICP'S come back as a non-detectable. It also doesn't even
sometimes,
mean zero. Yeah,
You
sometimes.
also got,
but you have a little bit more confidence.
You've also got the element of sampling. Sampling is snapshot. That water you send off is what was present at that moment in time when you put it in the bottle, and also representative. So you're sending off, let's say, a 50 ml vial. I've got a 1,500 litre system. That 50 ml vial I take from the surface might not be representative of what's down in the sample, what's mixing around. So,
and things will get even worse. If you take the sample before you after feeding the fish, that could be quite different.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on.
I do like these photos of you and your friends, Dong. They are great.
Yeah. So this guy agreed with this statement. That's Chris Mackley. He has been chasing trace element for a while. You eventually say, "Oh, just have some, better than none."
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, when I worked at Fauna Marin, I had an ICP test done every day, sometimes even twice a day, and it was not possible to nail trace elements. It just wasn't possible. So as a hobbyist, as you said, just have some. You don't have to chase the numbers. Just get where you're comfortable, somewhat in a good range. That's more than enough.
Yeah, that's more than good enough. And look at your coral. If a coral is beautiful, growing well, good enough. So the art of good enough is very important for the trace element. Good enough is good enough. There's no reason to, there's no perfect thing to chase. Okay. So how coral get the trace element? So the majority, they go through that diffusion, the trace element get into the coral by the environmental gradient, the more concentration outside than inside, because of the gradient that they just push inside, or more than likely by active transport. That means that they have certain mechanism to grab the trace element from the water and import it in. That is why that even the trace elements are in such a dilute, teeny little bit in the water, the coral still be able to get it. They have active transport that like arm go out there and grab it and take it inside. And also by consuming planktons and also particulate matter and mucus. The reason I put it there, pay attention to how coral feed. Coral feed on anything that's flying around that can fit into the mouth. That means fish poop is actually coral take quite a bit of saying a fish poop in, and I will going to follow up why that's important for your trace element for the fish poop. Let's go on the next slide.
But it depends on the fish poop. There was a study done on that as well.
Okay, this space intentionally left blank so I won't piss off any vendors. Okay, actually it's not a bad thing. So fish food containing tons of trace element because the fish need it. So for example, one brand of fish food containing iron sulfate monohydrate, calcium iodate, that's for the iodine, copper sulfate, Oh my God, copper. And it's not in a minuscule amount, it's on a pretty big amount. Manganese, zinc, in a very significant amount. So there are several reasons. Reason number one, all the marine fish or fish, they have a very short gut. That means that after they eat the food, they just poop it out, just like a fast pass, the global entry, that kind of thing, just go out. So that's why the fish food has containing quite heavy in trace element, because that the fish need to absorb the required trace element by just this brief moment they eat and poop. With that said, because fish has a short gut, that means that many of the trace elements in fish food are passed out from the fish as poop and end up in your coral.
Yeah.
So somebody asked me, go ahead.
And I mean, I can put some numbers on those.
Okay,
For the
please.
iron sulfate, it's 50 milligrams, so 50 ppm instead of ppb. Usually we want to dose iron ppb, right? And it's 50
1 to 3 ppb. That's the
ppb,
iron.
and there is a 50 ppm per kilogram. Now, if you do the math and down, you probably feed your fish somewhere between 3 to 10 grams of dry food every day. That's your probably dosing 10 to 20 times the amount of iron that you actually would try to dose with your little 0.5 ml syringe every day. It's not necessary. I mean, yes, I have trace iron in my trace element solution as well, but if you feed your fish, most of the time you're dosing way more than you would ever dose via dosing every day.
Exactly. And also, let's look at the copper. So, Corey, do you remember what's the copper sulfate level?
It was quite high as well. Was it 5 ppm? It was high as well.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
here's the question for you guys that are more in the know. In the ocean, in natural seawater, when we talk about trace element of iron, does that exist as elemental iron or iron sulfate monohydrate? Like, they're both different things, right, in terms of how a coral would uptake it?
actually, well, when the iron sulfate monohydrate hit the water, it just become iron, just floating around. So the other part is not important. It's just a chemical's name,
And
just like calcium iodate,
it splits up. With the iron, it also depends on the pH of the water, how stable it is before it precipitates out. That's why it makes sense to use different types of iron. We were talking about iron gluconate before the stream start. That's one of the iron forms that are pretty stable in salt water, and it's very easily absorbed. It's a gluconate form. Same with us humans as well. Sometimes people use iron citrate. That's also quite stable. But the problem with that is it's also a very, very strong phosphate precipitation. Not only carbon dosing and phosphate precipitation. Precipitation. You can the iron citrate. So everything has ups and downs. I personally like the gluconate forms. They tend to work really well for me.
So there's a one guy asked me that, should I dose copper? I said, well, do you feed your fish? I said, yeah. You feed your fish, right? No, then you don't need to dose copper. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, trace element does do something. There's some laboratory result that's definitely showing the trace element doing something, but in a limitation of the laboratory setting. So this is one of the studies showing that the trace element increased the aquapora survival rate under biofouling. That means that when you're feeding too much and you have way too many too much food in your environment of the coral actually suffer from that. But trace elements somehow can mitigate some of that. But that tells you all these scientific studies sometimes is highly limited into a certain scenario.
Yeah.
So it's really difficult to do a comprehensive study, almost impossible to answer the precise question like the moonshiners guy. People want to ask, how much should I dose? How do I dose? Does this absolutely doing something? No, this is difficult.
That's the thing, isn't it? When they're doing these studies, they're not testing it in there. They're testing it in a sterile laboratory system that has got no outside influence, and it's very, very precise.
Yeah. Because that's how scientific study being performed, that they have to isolate it with as little variable as possible to try to derive an answer. Yeah.
100%.
So our reef system is such a complex.
It's too complicated. It just makes it a bit more of a difficult comparison between literature and real life, doesn't it?
Yes, that is very true to keep that in mind. That even make the difficult, the dosing individual trace element, the scientific basis even more murky and not even. I don't want to stand on that ground.
Oh, this is killing me. It's like the more we know, the less relevant it becomes.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. The more we know, the less relevant that certain method is. Let's go to the next slide.
Brilliant.
Okay, trace element can be interchanged for the same biological function. So it's not one element doing one thing, the other element doing other thing. No, it's not like that. The biological process can be multiple trace elements doing it at the same time, or one of them is doing it, or sometimes that some element is missing and the other one still can do the job. So, for example, in this study, it shows that iron, copper, zinc, and manganese are very important for the symbiosis algae growth. Okay, but they did an experiment by depleting the copper, zinc, and manganese, but increasing the iron concentration. The algae perfectly fine. So trace element can be substituted. And it's not that clear cut what is doing what, but sometimes that multiple things is doing the same job. When something's lacking, if you lack of zinc, you have sufficient iron, and for certain biological function, they're still fine. But some biological functions heavily depend on certain element, like the urease, that it requires nickel. Without nickel, that the enzyme cannot metabolize the urea to feed the coral. That is a non-substitutable situation. No nickel, you cannot use urea. That is one example. On the other hand, for the photosynthesis, and then the iron is important, but all the other elements can help, and they can be there, they cannot be there. It's such a complicated situation. So it's not one thing doing one job. No, can be multiple things doing one job, or one job can be done by multiple things, whatever. My head gonna explode. So complicated. Let's move forward. Okay. Now we talk about important thing about trace element present in coral skeleton. That, for example, your calcium reactor media, your reborn media. So the element present in calcium skeleton actually is a lot to do with the environment. So here is the study shows when they increase the environmental element for this like strontium, and then there are more strontium going to be found in the calcium the calcium carbonate skeleton of coral skeleton. The reason for that is that for calcification coral, the calcification site, the part where they deposit the calcium carbonate, are semi-exposed to the surrounding water. Why strontium found in the coral skeleton? It's not because they enhance their structure. Hell no, the coral doesn't care about that. It's when they're precipitating the calcium carbonate, strontium has a similar physical property as calcium, and they get precipitated down there too. When they increase the strontium level, the linearly the strontium deposit into the calcium. It's not a biological function, for God's sake.
So it's opportunistic, isn't it, really?
Yeah, but from a coral grower's perspective, if you have run a tank with low strontium for a longer time, you do see the corals looking completely different, mostly very, I would say, brittle skeleton compared to a tank that has a higher level or a natural level. So you do see that it has a an impact on how the structure of the skeleton is compared to with it low?
The strontium level also can affecting the deposit of the magnesium or something other there. But when strontium is a very toxic element. Yeah. So if you prefer to keep your strontium at a sea level, that's perfectly fine, because at that level it's not toxic. But deliberately adding strontium in there above your sea level is not useful, because it's not serving a biological function. Actually, you're right, Corey. So it might serve a mechanical function, but not a biologically relevant process element. But when you're dosing strontium, there's a risk of overdosing it, then you create a toxic effect. Strontium actually is quite toxic. So I've seen,
If you're a manufacturer, it's not that hard, because the math is pretty straightforward to how much calcium a coral consumes to how much strontium should be consumed at the same rate. The math is not that hard. So overdosing usually doesn't happen unless somebody actually starts dosing singly the strontium. But in two parts, very unusual for people to overdose strontium.
Yes. So that's what I'm talking about. The people who singly dosing strontium is at high risk for an element that does not serve a biological function. So that is going back to the moonshiner saying again, single dosing element. So let's go to the next slide.
There's people out there paying 50, 60, 70 grand to go to university, and then look, you're just pumping it out free of charge here, Don. It's great.
Exactly. Now we talk about a useful trace element. We're going to go into the detail because we are 1 hour and 15 minutes down in the show. The Dirty Dozen. Where did Dirty Dozen come from? 2008. Okay. Yeah, the 12 very important, have a biological function, relevant, clearly understand trace element. Is the iron, manganese, cobalt, nickel, copper, zinc, cadmium, selenium, strontium. But the strontium, yes, a little bit, because of that because of the deposit in the skeleton. So that's why it's included into that 30 dozen. So yeah, maybe you're right, Corey. So it does modify the calcium structure, the calcium carbonate structure. Barium, vanadium. Oh my God, vanadium has been tossed around as a joke, right? No, vanadium is not a joke. It actually implicated in a lot of biological function in the 2023 paper. Yeah. Okay. And so then let
me ask this, because when you were saying, like let's say reef moonshiners being, dosing individual elements, it's not worth the time. Why wouldn't it be worth the time? So let's say from my perspective, if I'm using, if I have all my systems, each one of my systems is using, everything individually, me looking at, let's say me, I don't really follow the reef moonshiners to a T, but I use it as more of a guideline to, and I can adjust myself from there. At that point, if I don't dose, individual elements and I'm not tracking those individually, now I have to revert back to a product that I'm going to trust has all those products, all those trace elements in there. And then I'm going to trust that they have the correct amounts for my system.
The question is, first of all, the method gives you a false target. That's the very important thing, because that the target concentration most likely is not actually really meaningful. That's one thing. Second thing is that when you use an all-in-one product, the manufacturer normally keep those trace elements in a very, 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 very low concentration so that to prevent overdose. But once you're dosing one single element, that's an entirely different case. If you're tiny little bit of malfunction or of your dosing head, the dosing pump, or maybe then you can potentially doing quite a bit overdosing scenario. And the third thing is the measurement. How accurate is your measurement? Be able to allow you to dose individual element but not overdosing.
Mhm.
Let me give you a real life example. I have this friend who has a 450-gallon beautiful reef tank. All SPS dominate, wonderful tank. Right now, that tank is gone. Because why? He do a ICP test and come back for molybdenum is low.
Mhm.
Then he followed the guidance to dose molybdenum. And then he see his coral start dying. Then he sent out another ICP test. At this time, his is 10 times higher than what the so-called standard is.
Mhm. Mhm.
Okay, yeah.
Well,
So
molybdenum is another toxic heavy metal, isn't it? So that
it
it's
is
the danger.
pretty toxic. Yeah,
You're
it
playing
is
with
pretty
fire.
toxic when you.
But
and
that
then
it's
in
quite
PVP,
stable.
yeah.
And it's quite stable. To have it low is very unusual unless you have a salt that doesn't have it in a high enough amount. But molybdenum is pretty stable in tanks, but very important. I would say something like moonshiners to me wouldn't be worth the squeeze, because a mixed product that is good enough and then maybe add 1 or 2 single trace elements. For me, it's sometimes I'd probably dose fluoride once a week and some zinc once a week. Those are the only 2 I dose, and everything else I have good enough with my 2 different mixed solutions, so I don't need 20 different dosing heads. And let's be honest, for the normal aquarist, something like moonshiners is just not feasible, because not everybody has the time to have 20 dosing heads or be there every single day and 2 drops of this, 5 drops of this, 15 drops of this. So having a mixed solution that is good enough, that gets the targets 80% of the way, just how the difference, me and you probably will see a difference in the corals, but 99% of the reefers would not. So
Right.
that's
And-
why
and
I
I-
would
Yes.
say it's not worth it.
Well, and
Well,
I agree.
I think the fundamental idea behind the method is flawed. That's how I look at it. And also, we do not have the measurement to carry out that operation.
Mhm.
For matter of fact, if you do ICP OES, if you see come back with a not detected, you should say, hallelujah, great, I'm not overdosing.
Right, and that's what I would, I've always, again, I've always used it as more of a guideline than, the one truth of all, that I should hit this specific number. And I've always kind of caveated those guidelines where I see what the method is telling me to do, but I also see what my tank is using and doing and consuming. So for me to hear and say, hey, it's useless, or you shouldn't do it, I think it would be better to say that it would be pertinent to, I guess, that 10% of the hobby that is looking for that extra level. And then to me, I like it because I feel like I have more of a hands-on of every individual thing, and I can really kind of see more of the little bits of how my tank is functioning and what uses more. And again, it would save me time and a heck of a lot of effort to just use a single product. But for me, I find it worth it to take that extra time to do the extra bit. What are your animals worth? And then it fits into my lifestyle too. Again, I don't expect it to be for everybody or even a majority of the hobby. It's just the people that have the time, and I don't even trust dosers with it either. That's
Yeah.
So basically,
everything is by hand.
the important thing is that this is a hobby, right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
if anything you do make you happy, go ahead doing it. But
Right.
Yep.
I think that it is for me, my perspective is that I lay out all the facts, all the truths out there. You decide.
Mhm.
I
Right?
think that's it. I think
But-
let's bring it back into perspective a little bit. I think when we're talking about these minutiae of trace element doses to get our micrograms per liter spot on, I don't mean to be condescending any of this, because I don't include myself in it, but that really is the only sort of top echelon 10% of reefers will see a benefit of doing a lot of that, right? Most of us out here with a Red Sea Max Nano or sort of one systemized tank will have a perfectly beautiful reef tank with an awful reef dosing system on it, a 1-part system. It's when I think this is my opinion again, when we're dealing with these trace elements and topping up the these dirty dozen, if you like, that's really only going to bring out a slightly nicer shade of purple in certain corals and a slightly nicer, maybe a little bit more polyp extension than you've seen before. But
Right.
the difference is the lay hobbyist who's just in it for a good time and an easy hobby and a relaxing hobby doesn't need to do all this, right?
No.
There is a yes and no answer.
Reefer just wrote. Because that's the way I think most hobbyists should run. Just a very simple A and K in his, like, you got everything. I mean, it's super old school Tropic Marine products. They work. It's a similar thing to what I do with Nios. Yes, you can tweak the trace elements into solutions, but if you just go with the basic amounts that we recommend, you won't fail your tank. So
that's exactly where I'm at, Corey. I'm a big believer in, like, I've got an element system on this tank, and I'm looking to try probably the Nios system on that tank over there. I don't like mixing different brands or families of treatments between the two. So I live by the sword, die by the sword. If I'm dosing elements on this, I'll use elements bottles to top up bits. If I'm dosing Nios over there, I'll use a Nios micronutrients to top up. Just because I think people with better brains than me, like you, Corey, have designed these systems to be compatible, and I would stick to the same brand. If I'm using a Nios 2-part Ion B or whatever it is, I would use the other Nios products to supplement that, just because I think you would have already done all the balancing out for me.
Yeah.
So also that the very important thing is this is a hobby.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so whatever method that you feel enjoyable to do that.
Yeah,
It
absolutely.
actually is a part of the hobby.
Yeah.
It's a lifestyle. Yeah.
That
So
being
understanding
said, And that being said, I find
Go
it
ahead.
fascinating that we can manipulate these small numbers and see a difference. Don't get me wrong; it's we're sort of top level stuff. It's brilliant that we can do it. Just trying to make it a bit more real to include everyone.
So to be more real, for example, when you're doing a nano tank, if you are doing very frequent large percentage of water change and occasionally do an ICP and add some there, that will work most of the time. When you have a large reef tank, you're doing water change, most likely you should use some sort of trace element. Especially if you are not doing water change, you definitely have to add trace element. That is absolutely true. So if you don't do any water change and you don't add any trace element and thinking about just auto top off and photosynthesis, whatever, no, it won't work. Well, probably work for Xenia, but but for most other things may not work. So one way or the other, the truth is that trace element will get consumed, and the coral, bacterial, whatever freaking thing, living thing in there do require them, even though they're in very tiny number. So that's why supplement them is necessary one way or the other. That's the thing. You have to supplement it one way or the other.
I think that's what always blows my mind is the minute amount that you actually need for the coral to be able to take that in, and it's hard for me to wrap my mind around an SPS trying to consume one part per billion of this specific trace element, but I mean that's how they work, and the same thing with food. We feel like we overfeed a whole lot.
And sometimes when the coral take into the trace element into the body, it's no longer in ppb level. Even though in the seawater, the concentration rise up dramatically. They actively take them in. And then many trace element actually is a catalyst. They're being used over and over again, recycle over and over again. That is the very complex situation. Let's move on to the next one because we still have plenty of slides. Okay, the concentration of trace element ranking from the paper research shows that iron is the most concentrated. Even that is still 1 to 3 ppb parts per billion. Over nickel, manganese, you see that this level over there is a concentration ranking about the trace metal in the water. Even the number one, iron, still at 1 to 3 ppb. And normally in seawater, copper and cobalt are mostly non-detectable, but it's there. It's just that in a scientific instrument, it's below their detection limit, but it's there. That is, go back to the saying, is that when your ICP OES show not detectable, doesn't mean zero. So that very important thing, keep in mind. And then you don't see that, oh, non-detectable, I start dosing. Hell no. Don't do that. It's not zero.
Yeah, but as I said, I think that's on the companies that are offering the services of ICP to change that in their recommendations. I mean, that's what I've been talking to ATI as well. Because just because the OES says selenium is no zero or cobalt, and it says you dose 0.2 mLs for the next 5 days, yeah, but you can't detect it. It could be enough, so why recommend it? Rather have a warning sign, hey, we can't detect this. It could be zero or near zero. It could be in a good value. Maybe next time do a MS test to see if it's more than enough. Like a recommendation.
Yeah.
And too, and I was thinking too, you know, before you guys were saying about like doing your test, getting weird readings, making adjustments off of weird readings. You know, don't be afraid. If you get a weird reading, throw another test out there. I mean, what do you really lose out of it? You lose 60
Or usually just text them because they have. That's why they have two vials.
Yep.
Correct. Sometimes mistakes happen. Sometimes there's like in one of the vials, maybe a particle of food is still in there and it dilutes. And after a while, just ask them, hey, I got weird values. Can you test it again? And they will.
Yeah.
But you know, retesting is a really good tool. I think, you know, and I was thinking about, you know, the guy that overdosed, you know, the rubidium, you know, just going way overboard. And, you know, again, I guess anybody can do it, but I wonder, I'm like, sometimes it's user error on our part. We see something and we make a snap judgment to want to get it back up really quick, and that'll screw you up.
I think that's what Corey. What you said is true. Like it should be a bit more responsibility on the companies that are making the recommendations, because a lot of us out here in the reefing community will just follow the guidance we're given blindly.
I mean, very often I don't work the retail store that often anymore, but every single time I work the retail store, somebody comes in, walks to the shelves, grabs whatever brand they like, and grab copper, selenium, and cobalt, and come to the register, and then I ask them, hey, why are you dosing this? I mean, I could just say, you know what, let me cash you up and get you out of here. But in 99% of the times, it's really just because the ICP told me to do it. Not because they know why they should be doing it, or do they have to do it in general. Usually, I tell them, hey, just grab, I don't know, zinc, and then buy 2 more corals. See you next time.
Is a good question to bring in from John about previously we've said about ICP tests can't be great. Don't expect them to be great because they're cheap. They're not medical grade, right? So are they kind of cheap to get you to buy? Is there marketing in that? Is it?
What's that?
No.
It's better than having no ICP, right? So.
Well, it depends on what. So basically, if you try to use ICP as the guidance to those trace element, pretty flaky. But if you want to use ICP OES as a screening for overdosing trace element, or if you have a equipment malfunction, dumping a lot of chromium and copper, whatever thing in your tank, and that's why your coral are suffering, that is a way to use it. But it is. That's. But ICP-MS actually can give you a slightly better for certain element, but not for all the element. So the thing is that ICP is it really depends on how you're going to use it. The data is there, but there's so many variables there too. So are they doing the procedure correctly? Are you collecting the sample representative to the situation of your tank? Any element actually get precipitate or latch on your plastic vial? Or the stuck on their plastic auto sampler?
And I mean,
so
I've even heard
so many things.
I've heard user error from a company, and I won't name who. And again, anything could happen to where somebody's sample got put in their machine as the reference water, and that started so this was getting brought up, and finally it did get corrected, but it was a pretty decent problem.
Yeah, probably several tanks dead by that process already.
You're also relying on the average Joe hobbyist taking a sample in the correct manner as well.
Exactly.
You've got if you even as much as touch the nib of the pipette, you might introduce organics and phosphate or whatever.
And he's going to do it differently every single time. One time he's going to take it from this corner out of the tank. Sometimes he's going to take it out of the middle of the tank. Sometimes he's going to feed beforehand. One time he's going to use some hand cream, which is full of zinc, and then go in the tank. So it's never going to be the same. And user error by the taker is going to be a problem as well.
Exactly. So the basically the easiest way to do it is that use a all-in-one product, whatever thing, and then do water change, sit back, relax.
Yeah, just
and then when you feel curious,
you don't overdose, and everything's going to be fine. Yeah,
exactly. When you're curious, just do ICP OES screening. Make sure you're not overdosing. Okay. So now we go into the detail because we're approaching 1 hour and 35 minutes right now. So what does iron, manganese, cobalt, nickel, copper, zinc do? So this is a bunch of the biological function, very detailedly outlined there. But what I want to say is that the study shows that these metals are involved in this process. Does not mean they know what kind of concentration in the seawater is needed for this process. That is not part of the study. Okay, it is very difficult to do that. And different coral have a different mechanism. Some coral are very good at sucking in manganese. Some coral doesn't. Even you have a same manganese concentration in the water, two coral can react dramatically different. You have to consider that. So that means that that's another jab on the moonshiner's theory. Is that you just the fundamental science is not sound because there's so much variable in there. Unknown. Wow. Yeah. So let's go to the next slide. So now we talk about the most important thing, iron. I'm holding the iron ferrous gluconate. Just like Corey said, this is a more preferable way to dose into our body.
Let's have a look.
Ferrous gluconate. Yeah. Okay, what the iron do is that iron is probably the most studied trace element in the ocean. There's so many studies have been done on that. And there one marine biologist, pretty prominent one, said, if you don't dose anything, iron is the one that you should pay attention to. And nothing more important than iron. So now when we talk about that, even though that is that important, iron only exists in seawater 1 to 3 parts per billion. Good luck using your ICP OES to detect that. So, but even that small, 1 to 3 ppb is already the most concentrated essential trace element in the ocean. Iron, 1 to 3 ppb. Now, people were wondering that why I'm holding this gluconate, ferrous gluconate. I'm going to the next slide and tell you why.
Is it the same argument, Don? What we said about phosphate in a previous show about we run our phosphate higher in tanks because in the ocean you've got a vast, although it's only undetectable such a small level, it's an infinite supply. Is that the same thing with trace elements?
Actually, in the ocean, yes, it's infinite supply of 1 to 3 ppb in the ocean.
So does that mean running our tanks a bit higher is the same sort of process as we would with phosphate, or is it toxicity comes into play?
I think actually, iron specifically is precipitation is the biggest problem because it precipitates out so fast. Let's say you're like I did the math on how much iron I'm dosing. Usually you want to be 0.2 ppb per day, like the amount 0.2 to 0.4, something like that is what ICPs usually say it should be. I'm dosing 3 ppb per day, so about 10 to 15 times the amount that you should be dosing, but I spread that out over the day, and still next day my iron is pretty much not detectable. So you have to dose so much higher to get enough into whatever uses it up.
Okay.
Yes, because that precipitation is a big problem in a reef tank. Actually, a reef tank is quite different environment than the ocean.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So because just like you said, Jamie, so in the ocean, there's a infinite supply. You precipitate out, so what? More coming in. In our tank, precipitate out, gone.
Yeah.
And then we're going to talk about more about the organic ligand. Okay, so now we talk about available iron. There's an important concept, bioavailable iron. If, for example, when you see a doctor, you have anemia, so that you need more iron in your bloodstream, what the doctor prescribe you? Ferrous gluconate is organic iron. They don't provide you a frying pan, like in the in a Rapunzel. Maybe iron skillet.
Pan, yeah.
Hey, your iron is low in your blood. Here's a frying pan and chew this. So because the frying pan is not bioavailable. So same thing. If you're dropping some freaking iron solution you bought off the shelf, doesn't mean the iron actually is bioavailable. Okay. So
yeah, I mean, there's the opposite of with the iron as well. Very, very often I get questions after ICP tests from European salts that my iron is really high, my manganese is very high, like talking 10 ppb or up to 50. But that's not actually iron in a bioavailable form. It's ferrocyanide. Sounds crazy, but yes, ferrocyanide, which is used as a anti-caking in salts. So
the ferrous isocyanide, right?
Yeah. It's not bioavailable, so it precipitates out super fast. But if you do an ICP right after a water change, your iron is off the charts. People freak out, but actually there's 0 iron in it.
Exactly. Yeah. That tells also. Now I want to jab another sword into the backyard liquor method, the moonshiner method. So now you're saying is that
you're really out for the moonshiners tonight.
Oh yes, because I've seen so many tank failure due to that method. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's why something you shouldn't really try to do that. So
this is just the opinions of Dong Zhao and not the Reefers.
Yeah. So not the Reefers
Don't
network.
come for me,
my personal.
Andrew. Don't come for me.
Yeah. So that's my. So yeah, Andrew, if you want to come here and beat me up, sure, I take you to Chinese dim sum first.
But listen, I will give a little bit of pushback.
Okay.
I know. I mean, it's what we use here. I've used reef moonshiners, for years, and again, it's not as strict as it was in the beginning, but I've also kind of got an idea of what my tanks are using and everything. But I mean, we have good success here. I don't overdose anything, and if I do find that I'm trending anywhere high or I've done something, usually the correction doses or the daily doses are much lower below anything that would be, of concern. And, if you're actually paying attention to your dosing and you're paying attention to your ICPs, you're never going to that point of no return to where you're actually doing damage now. So, I mean, we've had success here, and I haven't had the argument presented to me enough to where, don't get me wrong, I would like certain workloads off my plate, but I still, I can't make it make sense in my mind to where if we have success doing this, I can't say it's not worth the squeeze, at least again, my level is different from a lot of the other hobbyist levels. So I'm looking for something entirely different.
One thing that this kind of labor-intensive method can bring to the hobby is that allow you to pay more attention to your tank.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That actually makes a
Yeah,
huge
for
difference.
sure.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
why I like the zero-bit method as well, because people were hands-on with their tanks as well. Yeah, they were on their tank every day.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're
Then
back
you
to that
pay more
10% of
attention
reefers
to it.
again. We're back to that upper 10% of reefers again, aren't we? You know, you can do it.
Yeah. So then we can go to the next slide because okay, now what is a ligand? Okay, so a ligand basically is organic compound in the seawater that latch to the iron to make the iron more bioavailable. It's similar to this the doggy pill wrap. For example, when I feed my puppy, hey, they just doesn't like the pill. They won't eat the pill, so they wrap the pill with some sort of meat, something, or peanut butter. Then the doggy will eat it. Same thing. The organic ligand is like the doggy pill wrap to wrap the iron to make the iron more tasteful or easier to absorb, easier to get into the coral or bacteria or whatever, or algae.
Yep.
That is what a ligand is. Now let's go to the next slides. So that's why so you can see on this slide the iron has a very busy role implicated in so many different freaking things. Is bioavailable iron, the iron that is bind to the ligand. When we talk about that, there's another concept come out, DOC. We keep hearing about the DOC, right? So let's go to the next slide. So well, sorry, then I probably lost one slide there. The DOC actually is the important is where the ligand coming from. The dissolved organic compound. So it's not all the DOC is your enemy. With extremely low DOC, your iron just crash out, not become available. So now when we look at something, they always both sides. Like DOC, too much DOC or too little DOC, and what type of DOC? No, it's not all DOCs are bad. You need to take it out. No, it's not. DOC plays a role.
DOC can also have a negative effect on trace elements.
Yes.
Like if you use activated carbon, depending on what type of carbon, if the trace elements binds to a pretty big organic molecule, then it gets pulled out to the with the carbon. That's how it works. Usually carbons don't bind trace elements that well, but it has to bind to an organic and then it gets bound to the carbon.
And that's another thing is that the DOC also can, just like you said, can play a bad role. For example, some very big greasy ball molecule, they bind to your trace element, then the trace element cannot bind to the proper ligand, and then they cannot be utilized by coral or bacteria or whatever. So this is such a complex system. When you dose that several drops of the liquid into your tank, there's a complex things happening in there. And because the complexity of that little drops of metal have to go through in this environment, you don't know how much actually become bioavailable, how much get precipitated out, how much get wrapped by a big balls of grease and not being utilized. But then when you do the ICP test, they all show up. So you got a 3 ppb, let's say. You get 3 ppb reading on your ICP. You say, oh, you're perfect. No, it's not.
You've been pulled up on your spelling, Don. You spelled it legend. I did wonder what you were saying. But Mo has kindly said a ligand is a bonding one.
Ligand.
A legend is Don. There you go.
Sorry, my bad. Okay.
Cheers,
so now, thank you. Sometimes I skip my, Thank you very much. So what happened is that, you got a test result back. You look at all these number. Even your number nailed the target, it doesn't mean this trace element actually available to your coral. Yep. Now we talk about overdose of iron. So iron actually has a much, it's not that lethal when you overdose it. What you're gonna have? algae bloom, including cyanobloom. Cyanobloom caused by excess of iron is well documented.
That makes sense though, because people that run, I know you touched on this last week, but people that run refugiums see a depletion of iron and amongst other things.
Oh
So
yeah, oh yeah.
that ties in with that.
With that said, that's a very good point. That's one of the reasons I do not use refugium, because you are creating a competitor of iron and manganese and other trace element over your coral. You already don't know how much the little bottle you dose into the reef that is available to your coral. You already don't know that. Now you put another complexity in your system, algae.
Yeah.
Now your picture is so complicated, you really don't know what to sing anymore. Right?
I change my mind every week, Don. Every week.
So the risk of overdosing iron is algae bloom. So sometimes your cyano bloom might caused by overdosing iron. But on the other hand, when you think about that, your cyano is saving your reef by absorbing this excess iron.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on because we only have 10 minutes left. Manganese has been talked about so often these days, especially for the Garnipora. So the funny thing about Garnipora is that some studies shows that in the area where Garnipora really blooming and healthy, the manganese and iron concentration is like up to 1,000 times higher than normal. For example, those area is closer to the runoff from the volcano, whatever saying. So apparently the manganese benefit, the Garnipora is well documented in this hobby. And it actually is, even in the scientific literature, yes, is implicated. Yeah. But not only that, manganese supplement also can help Aquapora midipora, which is one of our favorite SPS.
Yep.
Now you guys have a heat wave. I have a heat wave. Maybe our midipora is still doing great. Maybe because of the little bit of manganese in there. So
Is that the study that was done recently with the big bolus doses of manganese?
yeah, 2025.
Yeah. But they were dosing some crazy numbers. They were dosing 5 ppb, 10 ppb, and 15.
Yeah.
Compared to what we're striving for. Let's say high numbers is 1. Yeah, 0.5. But the high number, let's say, would be 1. And they were dosing 5, 10, and 15. Those crazy numbers.
But at least the coral doesn't. Well, this coral is still alive. That's is.
Yeah, but I don't know how would like algae blooms or something. I mean, I would be interested to test it out if like these bolus doses actually do something for a tank. Like
good
much
point.
gets used up and then precipitates out the rest. But
yeah,
the paper was interesting and it looked very, very promising, to be honest.
So because the way you do a bolus, when metal precipitate out from the water. So, for example, like a carbonate salt or hydroxide, and they form a crystal center and actually latch out more. So the precipitation, after precipitation, your concentration actually lower than the saturation point.
Once these sort of metals are precipitated out of solution, I'm guessing it's not like a nutrient sink where they can leach back out again. Is it a one-way reaction?
I think it's a one-way reaction. Yeah, the carbonate
mostly,
is difficult.
But it could
Mostly.
But some bacteria can over time slowly break it open, but those bacteria take very, very long. But they could eventually, but usually after you do water changes and suck up the detritus that builds up, and then it doesn't affect the tanks that much. That's what I would call old tank syndrome. Like if you don't really take care of your tank, and all these kind of things do precipitate back out, leach back out.
Okay.
So water change and suck up the detritus, very important.
Mr. John Wright, who does a DIY manganese solution, turn orange and dosing container. It's a strange colour for that. Should I make a more dilute concentration? John, are you sure it's not just a bottle of your own piss, you old bastard?
I think it probably oxidized, right?
Yeah. So would
When
that
you
be the
turn-
right thing
yeah.
to do then? To dilute
Yeah.
dilute it and dose more? Yeah, that's a
Yeah,
sensible idea.
because
Mate.
that the different stage of the metal plays a huge role. Like iron, the iron 2+ is functional, 3+ is not.
And I mean, there is a reason why companies like ATI, Fauna Marin, Zelements, and they sell the stuff because they actually then take care of to keep it stable in solution for at least 2 years. You have
The
to
formulation.
do that.
Yeah.
Yes, lower pHs, sometimes some higher pHs. Some need stabilizers added. Yeah, I mean, that's why if you actually want to go the DIY route, make sure that you use correct PPE because some of them are really dangerous. Make small batches because it's not very stable if you do it DIY.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
So actually, from my experience, the DIY I use only the iron. The other things, no. I buy the commercial
Yeah, I
trace
think that's
element
safer.
mix. Yeah.
We also
And
got
also that the
Pradeep saying,
Yes.
sorry, John, always that's what we was talking about earlier. The ICP always says lower limit of detection or low detection. That is the thing, isn't it, with such low doses? I think, as we said, if you're putting a bit in, you're probably all right.
Yeah, exactly. So you dose some, you're probably all right. You don't need to shoot for a certain target. And also the other thing is that just like Corey said, many of these commercial available trace elements from big company, important, big company, not somebody on the basement and mix up their own solution. So there is an important process called the formulation to make sure the element doesn't oxidize, doesn't crash out. So there's quite a bit of effort put into that. So if you really want to go dosing trace element, well, I would say just buy the commercial one. You save you a lot of headache. It just some of them is just not worth do it yourself, and also the amount they require is so small. Because if I want to dose do it myself iron supplement using this bottle, this will probably last 100 years and more. this and also with the amount of effort versus the price I can buy, if you don't need a lot,
For me personally, I would much rather buy the product from a reputable company, just because I know I'm not going to make a wrong calculation and cock it all up. And you pay for that peace of mind, and I think that justifies the price for me. You know,
the key word is a reputable company. The key word is like that. It's not somebody's own laboratory mixing.
Right.
That's the key word. Let's move on. So manganese normally is extremely low in seawater, ranging between 0.004 ppb to about 0.4 ppb. But it's an infinite supply in the ocean at that low concentration. For coral, the toxicity level is approximately about 1 ppm or 0.7 ppm. So if you overdose a little bit, not really such a big deal. But sometimes that if you still need to take extreme care, because 1 ppm. Wow.
But see, that's interesting. See, you're writing, like the paper says 0.7 ppm. Sorry, I was reading ppb. Okay, sorry, my mistake. I was reading ppb. Okay.
Yeah. So the manganese has a pretty big tolerance level, but you still be careful because 0.7 ppm is still pretty low. Yeah. So let's move on. Cobalt. This is called a super rare element.
Super trace elements.
Super trace element. So if you really want to chase this thing, because that the toxic concentration is between 0.2 to 1 parts per billion.
Well, I've been running it at 0.4 for quite some time, and so far haven't seen anything negative. I've been pushing it a little bit just to see if I see anything negative from it.
But
so
some
far,
of your provided might be higher as well, like we said earlier, are keeping that continuum okay. Could that be it?
Yes. And because that the probably when we're talking about this concentration is the bioavailable concentration that actually the coral can take in. Yeah, so that's a major important. But that means that you really need an ICPMS for this guy. Yeah. For you, when you look at OES, you can just wipe that number off your report. But if you detect something, you should go do water change now.
And beforehand, we were talking about dosing cobalt as well. I mean, in a lot of these newer vitamin amino mix products is vitamin B12. So basically, if you're dosing vitamin B12, you're also dosing cobalt. And people are dosing these neon green solutions quite a lot nowadays. So you're dosing cobalt quite a lot.
So there is so many places that the trace element can enter the tank.
Yep.
So many. So that is why. But since these things are so toxic, we always should take a more conservative method when we're approaching those trace elements. So let's move on because we already hit the 2 hour. Nickel concentration ranging from 0.2 to 2 ppb. And then, but the good thing is that nickel is slightly, well, you have a slightly bigger window, but actually it's really not that big, for matter of fact. So the toxic level, the chronic toxic level is about 7 to 30 ppb, which is pretty low. So when you reach about 0.15 ppm, or if your OES detected it, you're probably in trouble. Just kidding. So the nickel is an absolutely required trace metal for your urea to work. And is much better if you really want to make sure your nickel is in range, ICPMS. Yeah.
You know what's so interesting about this?
I don't agree with nickel. Sorry, I just want
you're good. You're good.
that you need an MS. Nowadays, most ICP OAS are so good that they can. I've seen as low as 0.5 measured from an OAS, which is more than enough for most people. Yeah, PPB.
Okay.
More than enough for most people to know, hey, I'm overdosing or I'm underdosing nickel. And I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's good information. Yeah. So, well, in that case, I really need to look at the upper level to make sure you're not overdosing. So, yeah.
And I was looking at, I'm looking at all these, like, looking at your slides and seeing, the concentrations ranging from, 0.2 to 2 ppb. And, I'm looking at like OCAMO, ICP test, and the ranges are different from, what is saying is, concentrations are good with this. Even in the previous slide with the manganese, it was saying manganese, up to like 0.4 ppb. But then when you look at like OCAMO, it was
ppm.
ppm. Okay, ppm.
Yeah, that's why I freaked out for a second as well. It's like 0.7 ppb. That's totally
okay.
Yeah, it's ppm.
Yeah.
But even at the nickel concentrations, I'm looking at it's saying 2 to 5 is an ideal value.
2 to 5 is totally fine.
Yeah.
But then, fine. Yeah, because the 7 to 30 is the chronic toxic level. So that's perfectly fine. And also, when you that is another reason that in a reef tank, our level can be a little bit higher than the natural seawater because we do not have an infinite supply at a low concentration. Oops. Oh, my water. Okay, let's move on to the next one.
We've only got 3 or 4 more to go.
Yeah. So the nickel, that's to show you how this urease works, is that you have to complex to a nickel to be able to utilize urea. So let's move on. And then copper. Oh my God, copper. Yeah, copper really freak people out. So basically, the idea is that don't dose copper, please. If you have any fish in your fish tank, you're feeding a good fish food, you have sufficient amount of copper. Done. End of story. So don't need to worry too much about it. So
but I think people are over worrying about copper, to be honest. over the years now doing so many ICPs and working with so many customers doing ICPs, I've seen ranges up to 5, 6, 7, 8 ppb,
Okay.
like long term, like people having them long term and not really having issues in their tanks. Me right now, since I said my DI resin was exhausted and I just didn't check the RO ICP, I'm running at 3.5 right now, and I'm not really seeing any issues.
The reason for that is like this: copper carbonate is relatively soluble into the seawater. So copper carbonate, when at that level, when you do ICP, you're measuring the total copper in your sample.
Yeah, not everything.
But
yeah.
majority of them actually is in the form of copper carbonate. And when you form in copper carbonate, basically the microzinc flying is not going to be toxic at all. It's not a free copper. So that is another thing, is that how do we know what we're measuring from a machine? The ICP is at a total level. We are not measuring the free level.
Yeah.
We are not measuring the bioavailable level. It's just a total level. So we half blind, but at least we see something. That's the mentality how we look at all this data.
Yeah.
So even you have a 5 ppb of copper, but maybe 4.5 or 4.9 of them are not are bound up as a carbonate form.
Okay, but how is that actionable now for a typical reefer that sees the report and it
it's
says
not.
in big green, big red exclamation mark, totally toxic, tear down your tank right now because it's that bad? Like what is a reefer supposed to do?
It's when
The
you use
reefer-
the best tool you've got and you just look at it and it looks good.
Yeah.
For example,
But
if
people
you are-
lost
you're looking-
that. People lost the hey, my numbers are shit, but my tank looks great. People lost
then
the connection.
forget about
there.
the number.
Yeah.
Forget about a number. But sometimes that what I see is that people will have problem with the tank coral dying left and right for no reason. Then they do a ICP test and copper come back really, really high. It's not a single digit. It's pretty high. So, and then they find a rotting magnet or whatever, saying a broken heater, that kind of thing. That become useful. But if your report come back about 10 ppb, who cares? Look at your tank. Everybody fine. Everybody fine. If you really want to make yourself feel better, go there and do a 25% water change. Then sit back, relax, grab a tequila, and have fun. Don't get too hung up on this report.
Agreed.
That is another thing. Yeah, the manufacturer, the vendors for ICP test really should tune down some of the wording.
Well,
overall.
we
my
said
God,
it before.
big
We said it
market.
before as well that one ICP tells you nothing. A trend of 10 ICPs is more valuable.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the trend is more valuable. For example, that this week at 10 ppb of copper, yeah, everything's fine. Next week 10 ppb, 12 ppb of copper, everything's fine. And then one come back 100. Oh, this guy's dying. Yeah,
There you
then
go.
you have some action to do. Yeah. Don't
Agreed.
get nailed down to do this kind of thing.
Yep.
Okay, zinc.
That's one.
Low concentration. So, but zinc is pretty sort of tolerable. That the toxic at a high concentration, but zinc actually quite important. Well, I think, but zinc is not really that a problem because ICP is pretty okay, right, Corey?
Yeah. For
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
But
So, for
nowadays,
sure.
they have gotten better. I've seen measured 0.5, something like that. So below 1, and anything below 1 that is already detectable is great for hobbyists. So
Yeah, good enough. Yeah, detectable, good enough. So there is no reason to target a certain number. Basically, for zinc, for all this metal we talk about, detectable. Oh, nice. Not
but zinc is also
overdose.
something that is gone very, very quickly. I've did some tests with it. I had non-detectable zinc, dosed 5 ppb, did an ICP test. did an ICP test 3 hours later, was gone again. So that's something that
Because the
needs to be
zinc-
dosed.
The zinc that like the dinos, bacterials, they took in zinc like scavenger zinc like crazy. That's probably where they goes.
Okay.
So I think, is that the last slide or? Okay, yeah, here is a zinc containing, it's very important because it transports carbon dioxide. So you got to have some zinc. That's basically it. Zinc actually is quite important. So I think that's the end of it, right? It should be.
That is it.
Yeah.
That is
Stay
it.
tuned for part 2. Exactly 2 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've overrun slightly by 10 minutes, but that's I think it's valuable stuff. Like,
It's
I
a
think
big
one of
topic. I mean,
Yeah.
we just
Yeah, it's a
scratched
big
the top.
that was
Yeah,
part one
the
of
tip
part
of
one of
iceberg.
3. Yeah, part one
Yeah.
of 3. I think my sort of take home message on it is kind of what you guys have said is don't read into it too much to start with. Like, I'm always led back to like something that stuck with me is information can be correct and wrong at the same time. And what I mean by that is oxygen is the most toxic substance known to man. 100% of people exposed to oxygen will die. True statement, right? But it doesn't tell you anything in context. So you've just got to kind of take it all on board and do a bit of research and watch shows like this and talk to fellow reefers and speak to manufacturers and just get all the information you can and do it your way. Do it your way.
Yeah. If the way you're doing, you're happy with it, your corals are happy, good enough. And so just ignore all this advertisement and marketing. Just stick to something that you're comfortable using, is good enough, and always stick to a major manufacturer. That is very important. From salt to trace element to additive, stick with a major manufacturer. Somebody can back up all this product. That's very important.
Right.
Yeah, 100%. Well, guys, I think we have gone over, so we'll wrap it up there. We've got 2 more episodes to come on this, in between others. So obviously, massive thanks to our resident professor Dong for putting his thoughts together for us, and obviously Corey for joining on with your expertise.
Thank you,
and Terrell, your experience is always useful to hear as well. So massive thanks to you all. Whether you're all going to be dosing your cobalt, uranium, nickel, or tin. See what I did there? Work it out.
Arsenic. Don't forget arsenic.
I won't say that word out loud, but you can work that one out. Go easy. Do it your way. Overall, thanks to you all guys. Thanks to Exodus as our sponsors for making things possible. And stay tuned for more news on the Reefers Network meetup in Ireland in November, which everyone is invited to. Details will be coming out soon. We'd love to see some transatlantic friends over for it. But more details to come. So from me, Terrell, Dong, Corey, it's a good night. Good night to everyone. Have a great weekend.
Guys.
Have a good night.
Bye.